I consider it to be an important day today because we have the artist who's just left us. We have an artist who knew him, and we even have family here today too. So it's a bit of a memorial to this man behind us, Owusu-Ankomah, brother we called him, and brother he was to many of his friends. And I wanted just to, first of all, I think we want to, Papa has asked that we play a little something, just at the beginning, just to invoke.
Yeah, just that he might be here, listening and watching us. Sorry, I speak very quietly, and I'm still not being able to do it through the microphone. I'm just saying that we play this song just to reassure ourselves of the man that we are celebrating, but also to let him know if his spirit is here, which I believe it is, that we are here to celebrate him, and that he would accept that we are all here because of him and enjoying the things that he has left behind us for us. And so I selected this song by Angelique Kujo, and it's Eve, but that's from the Togoland, but it's the same in Ghana, and it's a song that it's a bit somber, but it's I think appropriate because it prepares us for what's to come. Thank you. Thank you very much.
People will arrive, I think, all the way through. So people just let them in. Why did you choose this song? To give, I mean, we should be pouring a small libation, perhaps, to brother, but tell us, because I think we're going to be talking about the culture.
So this song is in Ewe, and it's I don't know whether there's anyone here who speaks Ewe, but it's talks about people passing and the journey that we're making, but it mentions also God, Mau, which is what I understand because I don't speak it, but I know the song because it's always played around situations like this, and it's one of those songs that's registered a lot. So I thought that it's appropriate to just do that. And I wasn't here last Wednesday, but there was a little ceremony at the beginning, so I didn't even know about that. But I thought it would be nice to just settle ourselves, and also let's invite him in because he's definitely around.
Yeah. Okay. So Elisabeth is the artistic director of the October Gallery. I'm Gerard. I do a lot of the writing and things, and I've written quite a bit about Brother over the years. I think maybe should we begin with how the and Papa Essel, who has already introduced himself. Papa is an artist, also from the same place of Sekondi Tagarodi, which is where Brother came from. And maybe we even just say something about that, because in Ghana the big city, of course, is Accra, and Sekondi Takoradi is further to the west along the coast, isn't it? And I suppose it's a bit like, is it the second city? Is there there's a difference between the two places, isn't there?
Well, Kumasi will probably be the second city, but Sekondi Takoradi is two cities, but now they are twins, so we call them twin cities. And Sekondi is probably the oldest of the two. Had the regional office and all the other things in there, but of late Takoradi has probably outgrown it a bit. So they've joined the two together, and that's Sekondi Takoradi. It's to the west of Ghana. So probably maybe the third or the fourth biggest city, apart from Tamale.
But he Brother used to always talk about it as a place where he grew up, in a very large family. I think there were maybe 13 children in his family. But he told me once that his mother, who was she had a position within the region. She was one of the queens of the region, and she felt it incumbent upon her to look after children. So she was always bringing more children in. So I remember brother telling me once that he grew up amongst more kids than he could ever remember, none of whom, they were always thinking, well, who were these extra children? But his mother was looking after them. So she was looking after, and this warmth towards other people, he said, marked him. But he said it also drove him away, and he used to spend time going down to the sea, time by himself, basically, or climbing trees and dreaming and things. And I think that's one of the things about Sekondi itself, isn't it? That there's a massive natural environment just outside the city, because you have the coastline there, don't you? You were telling me a little bit about that coastline.
So as it is, that along the coast you got the vast expanse of the Atlantic Ocean, and not far from that you have. Sorry. You have the forest regions that's up there. So you log between the two. And secondly, it's also the beginning of the railway line, for example, that goes into the hinterland. And so it's quite central, and you got the harbor in Takoradi. So you got all of these other things happening. But the sea, as it does with almost every place, does draw people. And because there's the harbor and there's all this, so there's what we call high life in those two places that people would migrate to the place. So it's full of people from all other parts of the country still coming in there. And we got a very vibrant life and culture in Sekondi Takoradi. So the popular high life music from Ghana, a good strand of it is from that part of the world, and that have evolved into what probably today we celebrate as Afrobeat and other things. Part of it are from there. There used to be very good musical groups like CK Man, Papa Yankson, and all the others who set out the tone for that. But alongside that, it's also all the other artistic activities that would have been evolving around and things like that in that city.
No, yeah, I was hoping you'd tell me something about
the sea.
Just the sea. And
well,
you told me a story earlier about being out there by yourself.
Yeah,
I think it fits into what we're talking about here.
I was telling Gerard about this because when I read the interview, the opening bit where brother was mentioning that he goes to the seaside a lot and sit by himself, and I find that it's happened to me. I used to live in the north of England in Hull, and I used to teach in a school, Wodensi High School, and if I finish early, I will go to the seaside and I will do a little walk. And one of these days, I was walking between Wodensi and Hornsey along the cliffside, because it's all cliffs along there. And the waves at a certain time of the day will come in very suddenly, and you could be caught up there. But I walked, and I found that I was by myself with no one around except the sea and the sky and the cliff. And I was saying that I won't call it an epiphany, but I just suddenly felt I'm so insignificant compared to everything else around me that I had the fear of God in me, and I had to run to try and get to where I could see people. But I was just saying that brother may be sitting by the seaside by himself sometimes will have to contemplate all these other big things. Not necessarily the fear per se, but just the fact of his place in the whole cosmos and all the things like that. And I could see when he started microcons and all the other things that connecting, I can see that could be the early beginnings of some of these things that I mean. And probably like most of you wish he was here that I can ask that question. But unfortunately, he's not. So I'm just making connection between the sea, the sky, and our place when you sit by there on your own, maybe on a bit of a along secondary coast. There are a lot of big boulders like you find in Holland, that big boulders and things that stop the sea from coming in, and so you could sit on one of those and just contemplate the day away, something like that.
Contemplate the cosmos. Yeah. Well, I want to go back a little bit to the early days of Brother's work, but I thought I'd bring Elisabeth in first to just ask you basically about how the gallery meets, or where does Owusu-Ankomah come into the gallery's history? Because the gallery's been showing work from Africa since the 80s, and tell us about when and how you meet Owusu-Ankomah.
I very strongly feel that he's here right now. And I feel I'm sitting here to be there for him. So he understands that we're all here for him and for his work. That's the very strong sensation I have at the moment. So, we have the gallery itself, and you know, most of you know the gallery, has a long history with contemporary art from all around the world, and it also became very well known for contemporary African art, particularly in the 90s, because there wasn't really any other platform for artists to go to. So we worked intensely with a wide range of artists. So in 1999, I was contacted, and probably Chile, my colleague at the same time, to come and see Owusu-Ankomah's exhibition of a day at Angela Flowers Gallery. Angela Flowers Gallery was a well-known gallery, and every year they ran a program of 2 weeks where other artists, and I'm not quite sure whether also curators, but other people, invited artists to show their work for 1 day. And quite a few artists were discovered through this. So, they either hung them on the wall or they stood them on the floor. So Owusu-Ankomah brought several of his black and white works and had them sitting in the Angela Flowers Gallery. Chile and I went there by taxi, I remember it vividly. We descended from the black cab and walked into Angela Flowers, and we saw the work, and we met Brother, and we decided to bring the works here to the gallery. We brought them to the first floor at that time because that's where our storage was located. And I remember them very well sitting there for quite a period of time. Every time I walked through the corridor, I saw them. And we started working with him. So initially, we worked with him through group exhibitions. There were several important ones, such as Angaza Africa, which celebrated Chris Spring's book on, I think, over 60 contemporary African artists. In 2008, Chris Spring was the curator of the Africa galleries at that time. And in 2007, we had a show here of Owusu-Ankomah. His work was in the front room, Romuald Hazome and Ella Natchwe. And this was called From Courage to Freedom. Freedom is another part of that title. And it was part of the marking of the abolition of the slave trade. And David Lamy opened that show. So we have plenty of photos of that exhibition, of opening persons, but also of a lot of ladies gathering around Brother and taking photos with him. So that was a very joyful occasion in that sense. Another big exhibition he participated in was Africa Remix, which was a big touring exhibition of contemporary African art that started off in Düsseldorf in Germany, then went to the Hayward Gallery in 2005, which was that big year of celebrations around Africa 05 that Gus Casely-Hayford, now director of V&A East, led. So there are many cross connections, too many to name in one sentence, but important ones. So these are the exhibitions I remember in particular. And then, of course, we had solo exhibitions. We had two. One in 2011 and one in 2014, often circling around the microchrome. The earlier works that you see I think you will get to that, you see in the other room, were from 2011. They still had a lot of Adinkra symbols, but then later he went to explore the microchrome, which was the universe encompassing all universes, to say that in a simpler way. The universes that encompassed everything. It's signified by that round circle up above. But we will get into that much more. So he lived for a great part of his life in Germany. But in the later years, he also lived in the United States and then went back to Ghana for the last few years of his life, where I know he was active in the community there and painting paintings. I'm sure you, Papa, you will tell us, and Jesse, about that last series of paintings that he painted.
Right. Before I go to the last series, I want to go.
Yeah, you go to the first, but I thought I just
and go to the first series because I want also to bring in Papa on this one. Having written about him and tried to go deeply into these canvases, which are two-dimensional, I realised that there are only really, it's actually very simple work. Can I begin with an outrageous statement? It's very simple work. And I say that just in terms of structure, because there are only three things in an Owusu-Ankomah painting. Everything inside the frame, which you can think of as a background, symbols of some sort, and then figures. That's all he does, and it's there right from the beginning. And I don't have any of the early work to show you, but we've mentioned several times a Bloody Glover who had a Bloody Glover who had a place in Accra, who had the gallery. There we go. There's one. A Bloody showed me one of his early paintings. In fact, I'm not going to use that one. Let's see if we can get another one quickly. To show you an early painting of brothers. And it's there. I just want you to see. I mean, I'm happy to pass this around, but Chili, pass that around. There is a blue background, there is a single figure, and there are symbols. Yeah. Now, this is where I want to bring Papa in, because there seems to be something going on in Ghanaian art around that time. And I'd say you could see the same thing in other countries. The Chinese, there was a time when the Chinese were really fascinated by language that didn't have any meaning. Language, I'm thinking of Zhu Bing and people like that. They were writing things, but you couldn't read what was written. And it was something to do with censorship. It was something to do with things you couldn't say in China. There seems to me to be something going on, and we're talking about the 70s, 80s, so we're talking post-independence Ghana. Something to do with language, because a lot of artists, and you're one of them, and Ricky Mwamega, and I'll hope to come back to Ricky later, who's been so important in this series of exhibitions commemorating brothers' loss. Ricky is another one, that words appear on the canvas. Because the thing about these early canvases, they're not symbols, they're not Adinkra symbols, they're words. They're little phrases. And if you look at that blue painting, there are two phrases written into it. They're not easy to see. You have to go looking for them. But on the figure itself are letters, O's and I's, and words that you can't quite read. There's something going on with language, I think, in Ghana at that time. Can you help me with that? Because you do something similar.
Yeah, but it is that the emphasis of art training generally was that you can draw, but you can't incorporate other things. So it's figure, you have to master figure, and that was the beginning of most of our art training. You do draw, and at home, for example, I couldn't draw on anything else apart from if I have pen and paper. But I know I've been mischievous a bit by sometimes scraping the wall with things. And so this gets into you, and then you restrict yourself too. But then as we get a bit older and also the system get developed a bit, we found that the graphics students or the graphic artists can paint all the symbols and all the letters on the trotters, on the walls, on making what do you call it, sign writing and all the rest of it. But the two are never fused together. And so I think in the mid 80s, 90s, it became a thing where artists became a bit more free in Ghana to want to add texts, and they don't see the text itself as separate from, if you like, image making. And so the two became making their way gradually into the art forms that we were making. And some of the older artists would draw things like, if you've been to Ghana before, the trotters and the buses that take people from one place to the other, they all have writings on them and designs on them, sometimes of like Christian faith or Christ or just a proverb or any of the many things, that comments that you can make to affirm who you are. So we have probably the best one will be Nyame wo hɔ, meaning God is there, or all sorts of other things that you can put on there. But we decided that this will go onto the canvas. So artists like Delaki and Atu Delaki and Glover and others started painting the market and the life around us and started using those things. And even if we go back, there were been people who before that would have done those, but it become more prevalent and we're doing those things. And then our times, and I think that Brother would have been a bit ahead of me in that sense. So using the text the way that he does. But I got to a point where I decided the text should be treated the same way as we would treat any other element in art. So I don't want it just to be on surfaces, but I want it to be on its own standing, as you see in Brother's painting. So the signs are just the painting himself. They are just like any other element, and the figure part of it, and any other thing that you put in there. And I think that's what Brother took to a level. Because when Brother started doing this, it wasn't a small, pokey painting. They were big, bold statements. And it's on the surface, but at the same time, it's almost like he doesn't want you to see, to read them. They're just quite on its own. It's just funny, and you have to look. I mean, now we have to look into the phone to see. There's one that says, talk less, do more. But it's very, very, very subtly written. And I think that's his way. Almost everything he does, even in this big way, there are the figures in there which you don't see. You have to really, really look. And then suddenly, boom, they are here. And then you go looking this time because you know they are always there. So this is...
I think that's right. But so right at the beginning, Brother is painting. He's painting these little. They're almost maxims or little proverbs. Don't think, act. But as you say, it's hard to read. You actually have to go and work out things. And then written on the figure itself, these words that you can't read because they don't finish. There's ECI. And then you don't know where else it's going. So those are the early paintings. Thank you, Chile. I mean, we have a few of these. And also notice that in this one, in the top corner, the figure is again looking at a star. So I think that's proto Brothers. That's proto Owusu-Ankomah. That's kind of where he begins. And I'd also say, you have artists in other countries. You have Sherry Samba in the Congo, who again are using little proverbs, little folk wisdom. Sherry Samba would have a whole text at the bottom of his paintings, which would be about democracy or about. So they're didactic in some sense. There comes a break, and Brother then begins to incorporate Adinkra symbols. So the writing disappears from these paintings. But the same three elements still exist. There's the background, there's the figure, and there's this, instead of text now, we've moved to symbol. We've gone up a level, I think. And at the beginning, he uses these Adinkra symbols. Now, again, not everybody is familiar with the Adinkra signs. Coming from Ghana, give us a quick idea about these Ghana, but also talk about the proverbs that link to them.
Because I think the Adinkra symbols are purely, I think, an Akan symbols, probably Ashanti symbols. They are. It started as a thing that is for people who will be in the know. It's not for everybody, so to know, sort of.
Esoteric.
And then with time, it gained currency and everybody kind of understands which one. But what I have been told is that, like going to the Ashanti Hini's palace for a meeting or whatever, they weave these things into the cloth that you wear, the kente cloth and the Adinkra cloth, and they stamp them as well. And you need to wear the appropriate one in order not to offend the king or the queen mother or the elders in that instance. So they were not just symbols, but each one has a meaning. And if you put certain ones together, it could be seen as an affront to the king. So you need to know the right ones today. Fast forward to this day, it's become a proper common medium that we all do use. And in the 80s, 90s, particularly in the 90s when I was coming up as an artist, we found that we could use these ones more freely. We will use that in the kente, but it also goes hand in hand with the language, because in our language, there's almost a proverb for everything. You get the people who are well cultured in our language, when they're speaking, they can't go 2-3 sentences without putting in a proverb. And you might all probably have heard of the Nigerian writer Chinua Achebe saying, "Proverb is the oil that we eat our food with." It's something that binds the language. It's very rich, and it makes it more richer when you can use it appropriately. So it's all around us, and people will use it, and so we then became appropriate for us to combine a Adinkra symbol, which itself is a shortcut to these proverbs and these wise sayings and all the other things into our work, because we are talking about ourselves, and we talking about the way that we do it. So if it's today, it will be maybe how young people use their tech language and make new words every day as they go along. And so we bring in all of this together. And as artists, it's easier or appropriate maybe to use these symbols to communicate what our elders used to do years ago, but now become very common. And another thing that also I would say added to this thing was that the Black in diaspora, particularly the African Americans, were coming to Ghana. They were doing Panafest every few other years during Rawlins's time in the 90s. They used to do these things. They would get Louis Farrakhan will come with a whole entourage, and then there will be other people coming as well, and they have big concerts and our culture suddenly became relevant. That it's not shared by just us, but we got brothers overseas who also have the same pull towards it. So there was a conscious effort to bring these things up, and who best to do it but with the help of artists and the cultural communities. So this is how some of those things are.
Yeah, well, I'll pick up on that also, because we also we have a couple of Brazilian artists, and again in Brazil we find the Brazilian artists from the diaspora are picking up on particular signs and symbols that are Adinkra, and they're beginning to use them in their own artworks as symbols that have meaning, that have significance. They don't necessarily understand the root meanings, but they begin to have significance. And you start to see, we have a wonderful Brazilian artist, and he has this Sankofa symbol, the symbol, with it hidden away within his art. And he said that when he was growing up, that African houses of people from the African diaspora, they would have gates in metal, and the metal gates would replicate this symbolic language. Now, you didn't need to know what it meant precisely, but it began to attract significance.
Yeah, just to continue there. So, in art college, when we're third year, we do a course on what we call retention. So the brothers and sisters our ancestors who were taken across, they took with them some of these things, and so they were a study that was conducted, and we had to go back and see how those things have carried on, even though they were in the diaspora or they were in slavery and all the other places. And as you said, in Central America, South America, Central America, and Caribbean and North America, wherever Black people have been taken from the continent, they take some of the things that they knew before, take them there. They retain most of it, but then you get a bit changed to suit the situation. But when you go right to the bottom, that's those things that was there. So yeah, we did a course on those to see how similar and how these things have been carried over. Sorry, I tend to sit with my back to you guys. I'm sorry. Yeah. So
okay. So this is just this idea of cultural transmission and cultural transference. As I say, since I don't know how many people would recognize the Adinkra signs in here, at this stage, I think Brother is beginning to use more than simply Adinkra signs. But if you look at the large piece behind you, there's one there called Aya, which is the fern. If you can look at the fern there. Now the fern there, that's the fern. Third line. And from the left, 1, 2, 3 rows. Yes, the fern. Yeah, it's figurative. Can you see it, Chile? Lete, could you point out the fern, please, for us? Could you point to this one? Thank you. The fern, Aya. It's a symbol. It's not a real fern, but figuratively, people can see in it the fern. Yes. So there's figuration inside this symbol. Now, if I were to ask you, what does the fern refer to? What does Aya mean?
So the fern is Aya means, or the symbol stands for defiance, determination, things to whatever situation you throw at it, it thrives, and that's the nature of ferns. If you walk along any forest in England, you see them growing wildly. Whether it's raining, whether it's not raining, they don't really care that much. They just strive wherever you throw them, and that's how it is. So the resilience, the defiance, and actually, if you get the proper booklet for this, they will say the fan, defiance, and then there will be a little proverb or something to say something about the ayah underneath, and that's where the two goes together. So the proverb, if you like the symbols as we see them here, just stands for the proverb. So those who know will say it and then use the right statement that goes with it.
So there's a hidden significance to every single one of these.
I can see the one that goes round here.
I was going to say, would you want to do Janame?
So this one here,
yes,
is like
yes.
the
horn of a sheep or a goat.
So
Ram's
sometimes
horn.
we say Ojuan Mere or something, which is the horn of the ram.
The horn of the ram.
And
give us Janyame on the top left.
There is
top left.
This is quite a recent modern one.
No, stay with the Adinkra, please.
Oh, sorry.
Papa. Top left.
This is Adinkra sign as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's Jiyame in the corner here.
This one.
Yeah, and this is probably one of the most popular ones because it's accept God, that So without God, nothing is.
So without exactly, yeah.
So and that is quite a popular one. It's on the currency as well, because when they design the money, they have some of those things in there, I think.
Yeah. So what he was doing, what Brother was doing, he was taking this already existent symbolic set and using it in his paintings. And in the early paintings, almost all of the symbols were Adinkra. And I think, am I right, when they, you were talking about the clothes that would be worn, so we're talking about royal vestments originally, but then they become used because Adinkra means farewell or saying goodbye. They become used very much at funeral, at ceremonies.
So we have the kente, which is the colorful stripe bits that we do. But then we have the Adinkra, which is not weaving on its own, but what they do is they still got the strips, but we use a printing technique to stamp the Adinkra symbols on there. Originally, they will use calabash when it's a bit soft, and then they will put sticks in there to create a handle bit, and then they will use that and a die to stamp it, and they will still have stripes and join together like they would join the kente. And sometimes they will even weave a strip of kente between them to join them. So they are black but still have that colorful. But it's usually preserved for funerals and stuff like that. Whilst the kente, it's much more for the other celebrations and the brighter things. So those were the two, if you like, difference between. But they used to have these symbols which they will repeatedly stamp onto the Adinkra.
So I'd say that, again, to go back to the paintings, these ranks and files go back to the original way of printing the Adinkra. Each symbol would be printed one after another in a line, and then a line next to it, and they could be sewn together. So in his canvas, he's replicating the Adinkra canvas, the Adinkra textile, the Adinkra fabric.
Yes, in a way you can say that, but those pieces of cloth themselves are made by artists whose job. So if you go to Kumasi, the Ashantihini will have, I think, 7 or 8 villages, and each village specializes in doing one thing. It's probably like similar to here when you have the royal seal to make something for the queen. So there are people who do the stool, the wooden carvings, stool that Asantehene might need. There's another village that does nothing but to weave the kente cloth. There's another village that does the pottery, like all the pots and things. There's another village that do all the ironmongering and things like that. And so they got about, I think, 7 or 8 villages all around Kumasi. And each of them specializes in doing one specific thing for the king. And again, they became the centers of cultural artifact where people over the years now can go and buy these things because they need to make a living, but they do special ones for the king and the sub chiefs and all the other people around. But that's how it's organized in the Ashanti Kingdom at the time. And these villages are still there today. So if you go to Kumasi, you can take a trip to I want to remember some of the names, but I can bring them to the top of my head. I think Bonre is where they make the kente. Ihua is where they make the the wooden stools, and there are all the others that you can go, and they're all around Kumasi, so they're not that far. They're just little villages. But these days, all the places have been built up, so they're more like London, all come together. But they still have the areas and the businesses there.
Just sorry, intercept for 1 second. I'm not sure, can you hear me? Okay. When I was looking at his paintings right now, and we were studying Adinkra symbols and the history of it, I realized that part of the Adinkra symbols he cuts off, which is quite interesting. So, I never really consciously paid attention to that, but it is as if that work was part of a bigger whole, where you can see part of it, but it's extending beyond the canvas, because you have to imagine the other half of the symbol, and that's not painted. So it's quite interesting to do that, because we were talking about the symbols as a whole, but actually you find a lot that are just half.
That's a thing. I do similar thing, but I arrived at it at a different reason for doing that. And when I've done that, it's because when you are looking out this way, there comes a point where your eye view stops. Now, whatever is there, you either see part of it, or you see all of it, or you don't see none at all. And I take it that when I've done that to my canvas, that's my reason. It's basically, that's what your eye view gives you. And anything else beyond, you don't see. Though you know they are there if you want to turn your head. But if you do that, you will miss the things on this side. So that's how I explain when I do that. But I don't know what brother will say, but I would think that he's come to the end of, if you like, the eye view. And you've already know what you know the context, you've seen the Adinkra bit, and you know what might follow or what should be there.
I'm going to compress and try and move a lot further because, first of all, the figures also, and this is what's most interesting, the figures also contain the same symbol set on their bodies. They're naked men. It has to be said that I see brother in every painting. I think he was drawing himself as a kind of avatar. And even when there are 2 or 3, they are brothers. 2 or 3, it's the same figure. So he makes himself a kind of there he is on the screen, and there he is. You see the same figure. He makes himself the subject or a subject or one of the subjects of each of his paintings. But I've seen people walk through a whole gallery of Owusu-Ankomah's paintings and still not see the figures. And I think you told me something very interesting, that when you first saw his work in Ghana, you only had 2-dimensional images. Do you want to just quickly say that?
Yes, so we saw some of these pictures, first in photographs, and we couldn't work out the figures in there. Then when you saw them in the real, you look at the painting still, and then you go back and say, oh, there's a figure in it. And so now you go looking for the figure, and artists as we are, we want to know how this is made. And all he does is he just have his very, very classical drawing. I mean, his drawing is draftsmanship is right there. And he scripts the SS painting. So in some of them you may find the background color through it, and then he goes where there is black, there's brown, and he does that, and you think he didn't even put paint on it. He just like script all of that very neatly, and it's a very fine line, as if he's drawing with a pencil on paper. He just leaves that beautiful things on there, and because he does it quite subtly, sometimes you don't see until you're following the Adinkra symbols, and then they wobble a little bit. And I think of that as if you've thrown a piece of big cloth of Adinkra over the figure, and as you pull in, that is taking the shape of the person underneath. But it's just a very wonderful way of doing those. Yeah.
I think he's one of the few artists who is doing this at this level. It's a trompe-l'oeil effect.
I'll probably say the only one. I mean, I haven't seen from Ghana anything like that. And if you do it, we will probably say you are copying it. He's
made it his own. One of the things that's very interesting, Elisabeth, if you look at them, is that if you know the symbol that is behind, let's say the background symbol, and the symbol that is on the body, there's a disruption. The reason we see the figures at all is because there's a calculated disruption. He breaks.
Yeah.
The figure has a different symbol on him. But if you look at very carefully, one of the things I can't see anything, but I'm looking here. One of the things he often does, which is really interesting, is he disguises the way the background symbol is cut and disappears, and the symbols that are on the body interface with those symbols. So not only is he camouflaging by using the same background color on the body and the same symbol set on the body, there's very careful work that puts the two symbols together so that you are, in fact, he's attempting to confuse you. He's attempting to make the figures almost disappear into the environment. Yeah?
It's a very wonderful act the way he does it, because you can come around, oh, he's used Adinkra symbols and probably just pin them around and get, but each single one, he positioning them such that, as you said, they overlap and they don't interrupt with each other, but they, at the same time, you can even look at them as a new symbol altogether, except that you may find a red line in there or a line that says they overlap. And I don't know. I mean, you have to be brother.
You have to be
You have
brother.
to be brother.
So
You have to be brother.
one of the things that I think comes out of that blending of symbols is a hybridity. That a time comes when he begins to embrace that and realize that actually he can create his own symbols. So there's a time when the language gets beyond just Adinkra. Let's say he takes two Adinkra and puts them together. Well, that's a kind of a hybrid Adinkra, but it comes from the Adinkra. I'm seeing things here which he's doing. Then he begins to invent his own symbols entirely. And many of these are figurative. You'll see the snowflake in places. You can see in this one, which I think is fascinating, you can see Chinese characters in this one. Any symbol, this one here, kind of, yep, where we can point all over the place, but just look to where you can see something. The Chinese characters are fascinating.
I would like to know if they can't be random. I don't think he meant them random. Is there a message that is delivered by the sequential juxtaposition of these symbols?
He in one of the things that he wrote down was that for each painting he selects appropriate Adinkra symbols for them to, if you like, convey the kind of message that he wants to. When I've done things, I may use maybe just one for my piece, because let's say I've found a statement or somebody have made a comment which I will paint, but I'll find an Adinkra symbol that maybe matches that and add. But he uses a lot and different ones, and I think that he will sit and decide this lot here are what I think will appropriately sum up the message that I want to put across in this painting. You can find some of them in there. I mean, I'm looking at some of them, and I would think there are some also that will be purely aesthetics, as in I've got a circle and I want to work on circles down, but these things probably now are the time for us or someone to really sit and try and work out what this man was trying to do all this while. Because I started reading some of the things that we were looking at the works, and I thought, I've always passed through it, but never really given myself the time to really understand that. And as I get into the microcons and the things that he's coming up with, you know he's going somewhere. We're not with him at the time, but now we're probably going to catch up. And unfortunately or fortunately, he's not here. He stopped at some point, so we can try and get. Other than that, he was going to always be ahead of us, and we're going to be try and catch up. But there is so much in what he's left us that.
Yeah, well, I would say to Chile that I think that's absolutely correct. There's no doubt that he's using certain symbols within any one painting to create, let's say, a tone, a timbre, a note, the note of endurance, the note of resistance. But that many of the other symbols are used simply as part of the background set. However, he then begins, was where I was going to go. He picks up, you can see in this one behind again, next to the fern, there is a fractal. Now, fractals don't exist in the Adinkra symbol set. You'll see spirals. Well, there are kind of spirals, but there are no spirals. You see snowflakes. you see, thank you, Chile, sorry, fractal,
Yeah.
yes. Now a fractal is already telling us something about what he's doing, because a fractal is something that on any one of these little balls, if you go deeper into it, there is the same set of patterns. It's a mathematical pattern. You'll see on that ball exactly the same. You'll see a small ball here, larger balls and so on. So a fractal means universe within universe. Thank you. At this time,
I just wanted to add to the family of conversation that talking about fractals, and I know you said that the Adinkra don't contain fractals, but a yar, which is the fern, is a fractal. And so when you look at the fern, which you described as being so prolific, not only does it grow in a spiral, but each of the fronds, is that the right description, is a replica of the outer shape. So we have this possibility for fractals, although it's figuratively drawn, it is a reference to that.
Thank you.
you're totally right, absolutely. And I was going to begin to say that there are he minds the scientific world as well. He minds the mathematical world. He's going into astronomy. He's going into all these things. But there's no doubt that fractals exist within nature. This is, I mean, they say that the outline of the coast of England, if you go around it, it's fractal. That if you go deeper and deeper and deeper, that whole coastline has these little coves, and within the cove, yeah. So there's no doubt that at some stage his thinking goes beyond the simple symbolic and gets into a much deeper level of analysis. So I want to talk then about the microchron, which becomes his symbol. There's a painting, we don't have it in here, in the other room, which is an earlier painting, where there's a single circle which is a map of the earth. And I've only seen him use it a few times. It's in that room. It's the one over there. And there's a painting, and you see Africa, you see Europe, you see part of the States, and you see a bit of Asia. He puts the earth in as a symbol. So come back to Julie's question. What does the earth represent? What is that symbol saying in a painting? Why would you put the earth into a painting?
I think it was the football World Cup.
Oh, yes.
The Football World Cup.
I think it was the football World Cup. I don't
that,
know whether you don't remember that.
Is that the one?
Painting
Is that the one
especially.
that went to Manchester?
I can't remember it. I think it's a painting from
Football
2011.
No.
Oh,
It was painted in 2000. Was it the 2010 World Cup?
probably, but I don't know. Painted it maybe a year later. I'm not
think you're
sure.
right.
Maybe it's a memory.
It's a memory.
It's a memory.
Okay.
Gosh.
You can trust it or not trust it at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
But I seem to remember, because you also see the figure with the leg extended.
Yes.
Well,
On my knees.
I
On
saw
my
an
knees.
exhibition in Manchester
Yes.
about the football museum.
Yes, so it could have been really, yes.
And I
it did.
think that was because all the artists, even though they don't all do football-related stuff, but they were
Yes.
made to do that.
Yes, I remember we
And,
participated.
yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Was the
Yes.
Football World Cup, was that in South Africa?
No, the world.
No, 2010.
2010 was.
2010 was in South Africa.
Yeah.
But this show was, I was in Hull and I came to see,
Yes,
I think there was Hughes, Atakwame, Owusu-Ankomah,
Gerard was in it. I
Romain,
think, yeah.
and
Romuald.
Yeah.
Romand, and a whole lot of other guys.
Okay, well, you see now this is it. You see, specific memories, because I take that to be a symbol that represents the entire
But
world,
it's true
which it
as
does,
well.
which
It's
it does.
equally true.
Symbols
I think
are like
the thing
that.
is, so many of his interpretations are equally true.
Yeah. Well, this is the whole point about the symbolic world. That a symbol is plastic. A symbol can be expanded and can be contracted. So what I was going to say was that I think of that symbol of the world as a transition stage, if you like, to the symbol of the microchron. And these ones are the ones where he begins to show the figure interacting with this symbol, which is, first of all, simply a circle of globes, He begins to have words for these. There's a whole glossary of each of these is a micron, and the whole circle of globes becomes a microcron. And in his wonderful way, we were saying before that there's something fractal in the way he's thinking. He just keeps going up and up and up, that a circle of those circles becomes a microtron. And he has a whole glossary that goes in both directions, macrocosmic and microcosmic. And this is him searching for this thing. And the question, the big question, because I think he's full of enigmas, is what is he doing? What is the microcron? What?
Well, as I said, he doesn't speak a lot like probably I would do waffling around. No. He goes straight to the point. So he's somebody who doesn't waste words, and he's quite clear in his thinking what he's searching, and if he's not, he will pursue and pursue and pursue.
I was thinking. Let's take this opportunity because I know that time is going on, and I want it to be a complete conversation. So, questions, please.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I was just. That's so great. I was just wondering if he ever spoke about his studies and research, because it almost feels like a new symbolic codex that includes like Celtic symbolism, Eastern symbolism, metaphysical symbolism. I mean, it's like a vast range of symbols. And then, his culture's traditional symbols also. Was there any mention, because obviously that's an evolution and a culmination over time of accumulating knowledge and understanding of sort of universal symbolism. Did he ever talk about it? Yeah?
I'd go to what Papa was just saying. He didn't talk much, but I think he's talking in his paintings. In some ways, Brother reminds me of William Blake, who was both a great poet and a great artist. But Blake was involved in these cosmic visions. And the more I think about what he's doing, the more I think he's involved in cosmic visions. And I'd say that I think Brother was a hugely spiritual person, first of all, and he would talk about it. He gives us a whole glossary for what he's doing in these paintings. And a lot of it is to do with Ghana. He uses this word kusum, kusumatse. And these are ritual, sacred places. So we're not just looking at a figure painted here. We're looking at some kind of ritual. The best thing I would say is that he's actually. Let me take that painting as an example of what I want to say. The microchron appears next to God is great on the left, and there's a star on the right. Yeah? The microchron appears in the middle. The microchron is a symbol that is asking us, who am I? What am I? What am I? And the first figure on the left, is looking at the symbol and moving towards it, stretching towards it. This is one of the very few paintings that he does where the other figure is looking at us. Now, some people have thought that there's a sinister intent here, but no. I think the figure on the right is drawing us into that question. It's asking us, so what do you think? And I think he's asking us to ask the question, what is it that all this is about? And that's just that's existential at root. It's spiritual. It's who am I? What are we doing here? And what are humans doing here? Because it's also about humanity. I think each of these avatars of Owusu-Ankomah himself, they're representatives of humanity. So I'd say that these are big questions being asked. There is no answer given. I think it's for us. The figure on the left, on the right, is saying, So where do you stand on this thing? What do you think?
I also think it's that he uses the word the initiate and initiated. So there are people of his like who are in the know, and probably most of us are not in the know, or some of us are not in the know, and he's trying to lead us into that. I find him as a man of many parts, and he played them all. So he's the brother, as a brother to his siblings, but brother to us all. But he's also a philosopher. He's also a preacher. He's also a visionary leading us on. He's all those things, and those things come together in these paintings where he starts, as you said, from not having the microphone at all, but in a different, as evolved, and it's come to this point. And as Paul will talk about his later ones, where he said, job is done and I'm relaxing it now and enjoying myself. So you find the last paintings or the later paintings a bit more relaxed, not very structured, because he's giving us the word. And as I said, it will take us a long time to try and really come to understand where he wanted us to go. But he's made it clear in one of the statements as well that it's simple for us to understand where it comes from and that we can make meanings out of these things. Yeah.
And because it's symbolic, we can all make our own meanings, which is the other fascinating thing about. Let me give it over to the floor again, because questions, I think we need questions. This is Lieto who gave the position the other day. Later.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer. Oh, is it clear? Okay. Because the feel that I get with the work, particularly when you're much closer to it, does feel like a collage to some degree. And also the half, the incomplete symbols as well. And so I'm keen to find out what would have come first in terms of the outlining or the actual symbol. Is there any sort of impositioning that is happening that we may not be aware of in terms of the pre-thinking and before the work? That doesn't make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm thinking that because we've pointed out the three things that basically just make up his work canvas. So there's the figure, and there is the symbols, and the background. And now Paul will say, well, he will. It's very difficult to try and guess how somebody works. But when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking that he would do all of those things, maybe with a pencil drawing of what the figures will be, and then do the Adinkra. And the background, which got this rough texture bit, will probably go on, and then he will go over again to just make sure he's got all the point. That's what I'm thinking, because I don't know how he would.
I'm like I'm sitting between. I feel myself like central. I've got a rose on either hand, and I love it when artists look at other people's work and tell us how do you think he's done it? Does he draw first? Does he create the background first? How would you do it?
You would imagine as an artist you would ask that question, but that is the question that as an artist I never ask. How the artist gets to creating this thing, but I think he did. I think he did explain it to me at one point. I mean, to me it seems, and I will have to go closer, that he probably does the background first, because otherwise you can't impose that texture in retrospect. Yes. And then, indeed, I imagine he would outline both the symbols and the figures, because they're very exact in their design. So they have to be quite calculated. And when you get to painting it, you don't really want to make a mistake. But it is acrylic, so you can theoretically paint over it a little bit. You can correct some small mistakes.
So the black will go on last. The black for the symbols will be the last layer. Would that be right?
Go have a quick.
Go on right behind you, Elisabeth. Stay on camera.
I'm so sorry, I have to leave the camera.
Yeah. Well, there's a red outline. That is simply the outline.
So when I look at that, it seems he painted the background first, There was a sort of yellowish sheen first, and he, maybe with a palette knife or something similar, he created that texture in white. And in it, he scratched the figure. You know, that's virtually scratched out, that line. So it is drawn into that paint. Potentially he did that when it was still wet in order to get that. Let me just see how he would have done that. He would have painted that symbol beforehand because it has an underpaint of red in it. And that red is scratched out when he draws the figure.
Yeah.
So it's a complex thing. I think after this talk, everybody can go there and sort of analyze particularly these areas, but I think it becomes quite apparent.
Yeah, I think the black is painted over a red background.
Yes.
But whichever method it is, it's just a very what do you call it, perfected practice that he would have taken him some time to go through that, and he's worked it nicely, just so good.
And each of the I'm so happy to see these works again. We haven't got them out for a few years because brother has been very, very ill. He returned to Ghana, but he painted every day. This is the thing that I'm most interested to hear. And Ricky Wamega, who I have to thank for sending over images, was a very close artist friend of his in Sekondi. And he's been painting, every day he would paint something smaller. So something more like this size of canvas. Because these big canvases take a huge amount of time. And they're extremely detailed. But every day he would produce a painting. And as we were saying earlier, Ricky has sent me over some of his paintings. They're much more relaxed, I think was the word you said. They're rougher. And as somebody who's in pain and just Stephen, I'll just finish this and then I'll give to you. They're much more relaxed, and what I'm having looked at those, they're rougher. The symbol set has been completely reduced to one or two, with maybe a single identifying Adinkra sign. But there are roundels and there are lines. So it's been very definitely reduced, just so he can finish it in one day, I think, to some extent. But there's the figure. There's one figure in each of them. These are very sophisticated paintings. And we have here in this gallery, I think, we have the high point of his work. And I think we need to put it into the right kinds of museums, because this is work that will last. This is work that needs to be held in the right places. But these other things that I'm seeing are raw. They're not sketches by any means. They're completed pieces. But he's simplifying. He doesn't have the time to do this level of complexity. Sorry, Stephen, would you?
No, I was actually going to ask you. You've partly answered before I've.
That's synchronicity.
That's good. I was going to ask, did the artist have, and has he left notebooks and I don't want to use the word sketch, but experiments, attempts towards images that might throw a further light on the way you've been talking about the work?
I would assume that in Sekondi Takoradi, where he's, I think, based in the last days, he would have things in his studio. He was, I know, was working with a lot of younger artists, supporting and advising them. He went also to, I think he worked closely with the university in Kumasi, with some of the people there. I tried before to get to speak to a few people before I come, so I could give maybe like a more concise answer to some of these questions, but I didn't get hold of them. But I know that he did, when he went back, work a lot with other artists, particularly Kumasi, where they've got a thing called Braxa Line. and he's been doing things with some of them as well. So he didn't quite like went and kept himself to himself so much. He opened up to the artistic community. So there will be probably something in his studio. Maybe Ricky will be one person who could tell us some of those, but he's not here.
Ricky intends to produce a book about these last few years. So I think that's something that we're going to be working on, and we'll definitely try to answer that. But just to answer the question, in the large book that we did in 2011 or 12, he writes a poem. He writes a thing about basically explaining the ideas behind the microchron. So you'd think that it was all in there. But as I said, it's a little bit Blakean in the sense that, you know, he lays it out, but it doesn't mean to say that it's evident. You have to follow his way of thinking, which is beautifully elliptical or circular or spiral. So you have to follow the route of the poem to find out what he's talking about. Something to do with the essential, becoming better than we are at present, humanity rising to the next level. These are all huge ideas, and they are in his paintings, I think, and they're in his writings. So there is writing, yeah.
And just to add to that, if you go to his Facebook page, he's outlined some of this. In fact, he outlined up to the point that he stopped painting or showing work in, I think, 2015 or something like that, when he went back to Ghana, and he's focusing on himself and wanting to reach this high goal. He also stated that he went to the States for a bit and then came back. But he said he writes all those things there, not very elaborate writing, but just short sequence of what he's doing. And I think you can go, if you go to put his name in, Brother Owusu-Ankomah, you can follow what he has there. And he's got another one just for the microcrons, and that's where he lays out a lot of these things. And for a Facebook writing, it's lengthy. It's a lot. So you could, on your own spare time, just go to find his thing on Facebook, and you can read some of those things as well.
Since I don't do Facebook, I've never seen this, so I'm going to have to open a Facebook page. A couple more questions, and then please.
Hello. So just recently, I found out about the Adinkra, this amazing woman over here. So I won't give her details in case she doesn't want anyone to know really her business. Anyway, so like you spoke about, brother, sitting by the sea and looking out and contemplating, I think this gives us an opportunity to do that. I think as human beings, man always wants to know, what does that mean, and what does that, and how can we now make an alphabet out of that and know what he was saying? Perhaps he doesn't even know what he was saying. Perhaps he just got some divine inspiration and did these amazing things, and it's for us to sit and enjoy it and to just look into nature. And often, like if you doodle, you can make symbols yourself. I'm not saying this work is not amazing, but it is amazing. But I think, some of the questions as well, I just think, wow, I would never ask a question like that, because everyone's mind is so different. Like, how was this? Was that first? Was that second? Like the imagination of people are so different. For me, I feel that perhaps it's not a whole message or a hidden message. It's just his art, and it's for us to sit and enjoy it and bathe in it. And what does it mean to us? There's a million things that I could say, but I'm not going to. But this is just so absolutely beautiful. And just looking at the shapes, it perhaps has an impact on our bodies, on our healing, on our breath, just by looking at it, So yeah, that's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
I think you almost stole the show with that, because I agree entirely. I think that might be right. I don't think there's necessary. We can chase all these different pathways, but then that's just us doing the same thing. But I would say, and I think this is important, that there was a fundamental core to what Brother taught in life, let's say not necessarily with the paintings, and it was about love and fellowship. It was about us as humanity, where we were going, and how we got to the next level where we understood who we were. So I almost see the microchron as not yet in existence. It's up to us as a community to project ourselves and to create the reality that he's talking about. It's almost a symbol of possibility rather than a symbol of something that actually exists.
But to add to that, he also made it clear that these things already existed, and that they contain both the past, present, and the future, and that we would get to it, as he said, we'll get to it on our own terms whenever we get to it. But he just pointing us to those things, and he also mentioned about the relationship between all this. So if you look at the ones at the back, when he later developed them, there are 12 circles in each ball, and they are connected to the next circle of 12 and next circle of 12. And that's similar to what we say, the 6th degree of whatever that we say in Facebook and other places where people are connected. So we are all connected in a way, but he's trying to just point us towards that so we don't lose sight of that. And if we have that, then all the other things probably will come together, I think.
Well, I mean, we've certainly talked a lot. I'd love any more questions if you have any. But I think maybe Elisabeth, you have anything that you'd like to add?
I think we've reached a wonderful conclusion here. I wouldn't have anything to add right now. I think what I would say is take your time and look at the works and let them inspire you. It's just as much as we've said, just as you just mentioned. Let them speak to you directly. Embrace them with your body and your mind. And take a moment to be with Brother in his works.
I'd agree with that. I think he'd be happy with that. I'd like to thank Papa for jumping in and giving us his insight.
Thank you for inviting me, because I don't know, but I've always been moved by Brother's work, and just the privilege of knowing him. He just Brother, doesn't say much, but let's say talk less and do more. That's what he's meant to say. That's it.